Hi, it's Wayne O'Keefe. And you know, one of the things that really gets me sometimes is that I go fishing without any bait. So I haven't planned what I'm going to do, bad me. So what I have to do is then improvise, and that's usually trying to buy bait wherever I can. Now, the supermarket is a great place to get your bait, and so many times it's saved my bacon by allowing me to pick up bait that I can use either in freshwater or saltwater. So just to give you an idea of the range of things that you can buy. So first off, if you have a delicatessen place in the supermarket, you can always buy prawns, for instance. So if you're saltwater fishing, estuary fishing, prawns are fantastic. Get raw prawns because those are the ones that have the toughest flesh and more prone to be picked up by the fish. The other thing you can do is always get chicken. You know, chicken fillets, very, very cheap. This can be cut into small pieces. It works really well in estuaries and in salt water. Now, the other thing is that corn. Corn is a great all-round bait, both freshwater and saltwater. Sometimes, for instance, if you're fishing saltwater, you can put a bit of that into your burley rather than use it as bait. But even using it as bait, I've caught brim on this in saltwater or in the estuaries. And then, of course, if you're in freshwater, you can pick up carp. I've picked up redfin on this, and of course, you can get the occasional trout as well. Another thing that you can do is buy things like tuna, tin tuna. It's fantastic for your burley in salt water, and it'll zhuzh up everything that you apply it to. So you can also take your flour, make a dough out of that, and then you can add things like the tuna, as well as rolled oats, good old porridge. That stuff is really easy to flavour, and it is an absolutely fantastic attractor for brim, for mullet, and for a host of freshwater species. You can also add it to a dough that you make up with this flour. So you get white flour, just plain flour. Add a little bit of water to it, make a dough, and then start to add other things to it. Now you just make it stiff enough so that it will stick to your hook, and if you put a little bit of tuna in it, or any of the other baits you're using, just a little bit, I'd say about 20% of the dough should be those baits, it will work really, really well. Then of course, you've got things like this. This is brown rice or white rice. Now, if you add water to that, usually it's best to boil it so that it actually bulks up. You'll get it looking like this. Now what happens is, this plus wheat, so sometimes in the pet section of the supermarket, you can buy wheat. The wheat gets to the point, if you put it in hot water, leave it for a period of time, say it'd be several hours, it gets, or boil it. If you boil it in a pan, it doesn't take that long. You boil it for 15 minutes and it goes very, very soft, very soft. You can squeeze it with your fingers. That is fantastic because you can put a little bit of tuna oil in that, just a touch, mix it in properly, and that is a fantastic attractor for a lot of ranges of fish. I know that in South Australia, a specialist fisherman used to use it to catch mulloway. He'd throw that in first, which would attract the small fish, and the mulloway would come after them. And then of course you've got salt. The salt is fantastic in applying to things like the chicken. Salt on both sides, cut it into small pieces. It dries it out slightly, adds a flavour the fish are looking for, acts great as a bait for, well, mullet, for brim, and then for some larger species as well. I've caught trevally on it. And then of course we've got tea bags. That's not meant to be in it. But everything else works so well. The next thing I'm going to do is just show you how I might prepare some of those things for fishing the next day. Forget. One other thing that I've seen used before, if you've seen a previous video that I've done in Shepparton, there was an angler up there using bread and peanut butter to make up a dough bait that he was catching carp with. Now, it is amazing, but all he did is he took peanut butter, not crunchy, smooth, mixed it with bread, a little tiny bit of water, he made it so that it was very pliable, and then he put that onto his hook just the same way as we use the dough baits, say the Berkeley power baits that we use when going for trout. It's always worth trying something different, and who knows, it might not just catch a carp. So another one that you can get from the supermarket, very cheap, bit of white bread, you can make a great dough bait from that. Two of my favourite baits for estuary fishing and bay fishing are chicken and prawns, as I said before. Now the way that I prepare the chicken's a little bit different. All I do is salt it first. What happens with that is if you do it the night before, it'll dry it out a little bit and make it stay on the hook longer. The other great thing about it is it makes it more palatable for the fish. So you take a small piece, about the size that you're going to use, okay, and all you do is you take standard non-iodized salt and just apply a little bit of that to the fillet of chicken that you've got. That's all you have to do. You do it on both sides. You'll notice that I've already tabbed that down or patted it down with a paper towel, and that just takes any residual moisture off it. And so all I'll do now is just cut this into smaller sections using a very sharp knife. So what I'm doing is I'm just cutting these with a very sharp knife, which my wife hates me using, but it is sharp. I've always removed just the tip of my fingers doing this as well. So kids, be very careful with this stuff. Have an adult supervise you. And after that, cutting about this size, so you can see the size of these things, I then just cut that again so that the pieces are about 1.5 centimeters square. Okay, and that's what I'll be using for my bait. So as I'm rolling this, all the ends that haven't been salted are getting a little bit of salt, and I cut various sizes because sometimes a big bait will attract the fish, and sometimes all you want is a small bait. So I might just sometimes cut something this small, and then at other times larger pieces. So with that, I've now got those pieces ready to go, and all I do is I put these into a small container. That's all I need for one fishing session because I'll be using a number of different types of baits. And that is done. And what I'll do is when I go fishing, I'll also cut some of these into very, very small pieces and put them into my burley as well. So I'll put those in the fridge tonight. They will continue to dry out and they'll be ready for fishing tomorrow. Okay. Now another thing I just found in the freezer, which I'd forgotten about, which you could also get at the supermarket, is calamari tubes. Now the reason I like these, I've just cut a sliver off a frozen piece that I've got. The great thing about these is that you can cut those into thin slices and then put them on your hook just like you would, say, a sandworm. So the great thing about this is that these I put onto small hooks, and the white colour and the really strong smell really attract the fish. But the other great thing about that is they are rubbery, so they stay on the hook really well. Now before I use these, I'll cut these into small pieces. Some of these pieces will be quite small. I mean, I can thread a hook onto that, a small hook, but other pieces will be as small as this. And I'll use a very small hook, maybe even a size 14 for pieces like that, and then I'll have other longer pieces that I will use. And when I put it into one of these containers, I'll put a bit of tuna oil in there, and that will even add more attractant, more flavour than just the raw calamari, and that is a great bait. So that's what I use. That, as I say, you can get from the supermarket, and it works really well. So I'll apply a little bit of tuna oil to that, and that will be ready to go.
Now, the last thing is these prawns. The great thing about the prawns is there's no waste in them. What I normally do is I take the body off, leave the shell on, because sometimes when the fish are really picky, they'll actually try to pull the flesh off your hook. If you have the peel, the body on there, the shell on there, what it will do is it'll actually keep it on the hook longer. If you're not getting bites with it, then peel it, because we all like peeled prawns. And so all I do is I take small pieces of these, okay, and these pieces, the head and tail, and I'll do a lot of those, but the head and tail, I cut up into small pieces. This goes into my burley, and the smell of these is pretty amazing. It's pretty strong, isn't it, dear?
Oh, it's beautiful.
Clearly that was sarcastic, but what it does is it really puts that smell into your burley as well. So if you've got that running through your burley as well as in your bait, then you have got a winning formula. So already I've got 3 baits here, and I'm going to take as well, I'll be taking those worms that I have in my garden. So these are additional things that I take. The worms, I'll probably take maggots, and I may take a little bit of pilchard as well. Then I've got a full range, but if I didn't, I'd at least have these pretty solid baits to take with me. Now, I would love to hear from people who prepare their own baits, who actually go to the supermarket and get some of the unusual things and have had success with it. It's amazing what can be used, and sometimes you find things that work so well that they become part of your bait composition every time you go fishing. So give me some comments on what you've caught fish on before, some of the unusual things, and maybe we can share that and produce, who knows, we might discover yet another bait that works really well. So comment down below, and if you like this video, give me a thumbs up and subscribe.